have to control our own narratives with our children, because had I not stood back and let a lawyer direct me in what had been done wrong to my daughter, I would have thought, like society thought, oh, she had a gun, she wouldn't come out, she deserved what she got. But my lawyer was able to find information to indicate otherwise. All the policies were broken, shooting through a wall blindly, and making a deposition statement saying that he could not see my daughter initially. He could not see my daughter, but he saw her hair and her braids, and shot blindly through a wall, hitting her in her back, striking my grandson twice, 5 years old, my grandson Cody, shot twice by Officer Royce Ruby. So fast forward, we obtained a civil trial, contained 4 white women and 2 black women. These women sat on this jury trial for 3 weeks and heard all the evidence. And at the end, they awarded my family $38 million, in which the judge went behind them and overturned it. He said that we tricked them. He said that we, hoodwinked them, that they were feeling sorry for us. So of course we responded, and we went over their heads. And just July 1st this year, the appellate court decided that that judge, Officer Mickey, oh God, I can never remember this man. Mickey Norman, that's what his name, Judge Mickey Norman, had abused his discretion in overturning that case because the jury had made their decision. They made their decision. What I want to say too is that when we're going through these kind of traumas, if we don't fast forward think and understand that there's some things that could possibly be wrong, we can't just give up on our children because society says that they were wrong. And even though society may view it that way, they're not on the inside. They don't know what we deal with. It was 8 to 10 family members there with my daughter, and we were not allowed to communicate with her. When I first got there, I was the first on the scene. My daughter had a meltdown a couple of years ago, and she was having an emotional crisis. So she had been seeing a therapist. I got to the scene with my phone in my hand, with her therapist on the phone. The officer who claimed to have been the lead negotiator took my phone from me, hung it up, and said that he would communicate with the doctor when he felt deemed it necessary. He then proceeded to take my phone and call and communicate with my daughter and my family as though he were me. See, these are the things that the public don't know about. This is policy broken all the way down the road. And if we don't get off this conveyor belt walking backwards and recognize that we need to do our own research and do our own homework and not let the public put things in our minds or distract us from what's factual. All of our children have had people just tear their character down. And we have to constantly fight and build up our children's humanity. Because they don't look at us as humans. They want to tear us down, and we're already broken. And now we have to muster up the strength to argue and defend and fight. The general public, not to mention the people that don't get a court, get a day in court. I was blessed in that. But it's still not easy because I don't care if they gave me a money print machine. My daughter is irreplaceable for me. You understand what I'm saying? So they give you some glimmer of hope, they snatch it back, and then they want to dictate to you how you should move forward. We have to say we are in a constant fight for our lives. Heartbroken, I've had strokes. I know mothers that have actually died fighting for their children because the heartbreak is profound. We don't know how to move forward without the hurt. The hurt follows us everywhere we go. But we have to stand tall through the hurt. And again, like I said, defend, fight. It's just so unfair. And survival is not easy. I'm 54 years old. I never thought I'd be raising a baby again. I got my granddaughter when she was 14 months old when my daughter was killed. So I was starting all over again. And so it's hard. People don't know what the aftermath is like for us. It's extremely rough. We just have to really, really fight. We have to band together. We have to express our feelings instead of people imposing their feelings on us. You know, and I'm done. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Still standing. Still standing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Beverly Smith, and my son's name is Alonzo Smith. My son Alonzo was killed in the custody of 2 special police officers on November the 1st, 2015, at the Marlboro Plaza apartment complex. Alonzo was 27 years old. He was a substitute teacher at the Acton Academy School in Virginia for youth who have learning and behavior challenges. My son Alonzo was also a published poet. He was also a portrait model, and he was also a father of 3. Early November the 1st, around 4 a.m. in the morning, the residents of the Marlboro Plaza apartment complex heard and saw my son running, saying, "Help, help, someone's trying to kill me." So the residents called the local police officers. When they arrived on the scene, my son Alonzo was lying face down, handcuffed. One special police officer had his knee with his total body weight in my son's back while my son lay lifeless. The Metro police officer asked the special police officer, "Do you know him?" They said no. They said, "Oh, he was acting kind of strange, like he was on PCP or something." My son was not on. My son did not commit any crime, and he did not have any PCP in his system. The police officer asked the special police officer, "Is that your phone?" Because you can see on a YouTube video through the body cam of MPD that one of the special police officers was on a stairway going through my son's cell phone. He said no, and threw my son's cell phone down on the ground. Fast forward, when the case went to the grand jury, they had to do a search warrant on Alonzo Wilson, that's one of the police officers who was responsible for my son's death. They had to do a search warrant in his home for my son's cell phone. He had my son's cell phone, he stole it.
Wow.
To this day, I do not know why. There is currently a civil suit going on. My son's case went to the grand jury. However, after 11 months, as we all know what goes on with most of these police cases, when there was a murder involved, there was no indictment. It took almost 2 years for me to even find out the name of the special police officers who killed my son. My son's autopsy report states that he had a hemorrhage in the C2 area of his neck. He also had he was hemorrhaging in 2 areas of his back, and he had some bruises and contusions, throughout his body. The autopsy revealed that my son's death was indeed a homicide. However, the cause and manner is very tricky, and what a lot of people don't know is that the medical examiner office and MPD, sometimes they are in cahoots with each other, because they made it very tricky with my son's cause and manner of death. They said he had not PCP in his system. They said, oh, he had cocaine in his system. He died from that, but he also died from the compression of the torso. Well, the compression of the torso was the opposite knee in my son's back. That's what actually killed my son. He cut off his oxygen. But before that, my son was chokehold to death. That's where the C2 hemorrhage in his neck comes from, and the hemorrhaging in 2 areas in my son's back. It's still very traumatic for me today. And for his children and for his family and friends, and particularly his students. His students had a vigil at his school for him, and I've never seen anything like it. They made a paper mirror that went from one end of gymnasium to the other end, leaving notes to my son saying, "I love you, Mr. Smith. I'm going to be good for you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, you were like a dad." The school faculty and the kids, they loved my son. The school faculty told me that my son was a master of his trade, in which he was. My son attended Morgan State University for 2 years to get his degree in not social study. Excuse me. It's very hard sometimes to tell these stories, and when you repeatedly do them over and over again, sometimes things get kind of fuzzy. But my son went to Morgan State University for 2 years to get his degree in social worker. And before my son's death, he was actually in preparation to return back to school to get his degree. It's just unfortunately that his life was taken, that he wasn't able to fulfill that dream. And I was so ever proud of my son. My son went through a lot of bad adversity as a youth. And I used to tease him about the kids that he taught. And I said, "You really get along well with those kids?" And he used to say, "Yeah, Mom, because at one time I was one of them." And that was one of the gifts that he had. He could actually identify to the kids that he taught, and they could actually identify to him and respond back positively. I can recall during the Justice for Zoe campaign, when we were canvassing the neighborhood, that I met a resident, and she told me that her son was actually one of my son's students. And she said that before my son became her student, her son could not complete a complete sentence. He could not catch the bus by himself. She said, but a little while after being under my son's guidance, that he's able to do all of those things at that time now and more. And so that had brought so much warmth to me to know that my son had made a positive impact on youth. And I just believe that he had made a tremendous impact on a lot of youth. Although he just lived 27 years, he made so many positive impacts on youth, more than the people who have lived much longer than him. And his legacy still continues on today. I still, when this uprising started beginning after the George Floyd's death, I have been getting calls and texts from the students asking me if there's anything that they can do to help and to assist me. And I know during in the beginning, when George Floyd was killed, it was very hard for me to look at the video. So I did see the picture, which was very hard because my son Alonzo was killed almost in the same manner. So instead of the officer being on his neck, it was in his back, his knee actually in my son's back. Today, I have partnered with a nonprofit organization called DC Justice Lab, which is a group of young lawyers, young Black African American lawyers, who are experts in writing policy and advocating for reform, specifically for DC, which is the only nonprofit organization who directly advocating for reform and disarm special police officers in the district area. And we have 4 demands. One of the demands is to disarm all the special police officers in DC, to increase not only the quality but the quantity of training, and also to pass the Special Police Officers Oversight Act, which is written by Charles Allen, and to also keep these special police officers within the boundaries that they are assigned for. One of the problems that we have in the district with special police officers is that a lot of residents have complaints of the special police officers from the residents in which they monitor and government buildings. They have nowhere where they can go to complain. Also, there is enough oversight of the special police officers, so they are not held accountable a lot of times for their infractions. So this is what this petition is trying to do, trying to get enough signatures so that we can present this petition to the DC Council and to Mayor Bowser. There is currently now a petition that is on Colors of Change. I would like for each of you to go on there and please sign the petition, because we definitely need reform, and also in the area of not just Metropolitan Police, but also with special police in the DC area. I would like to thank each and every one of you for listening, for you all continued support, for all the families that are impacted by police brutality. And again, I'm always thinking Black Lives Matter. You know, some of us get into trouble because we're always boasting about Black Lives Matter and how much they support their local residents. Sometimes we as parents, we get a lot of flack from other families in other states, but it is the truth. Black Lives Matter DC really represents and support their local family. And they have been with me. They have actually been with me in the beginning of the Justice for All campaign, and even now, they're still standing beside my side. Anytime I call on them for anything, they are always there. So I really want to thank you again for always being that good support for myself and the rest of the local families in the DC metropolitan area. Thank you.
All right, family. Before I start, I'm just going to say the divinity in me recognizes and acknowledges the divinity in each one of you. I am Gina Best. My daughter is India Kager. My baby was stalked, ambushed, and murdered by a literal lynch mob of 16 plus Virginia Beach Police SWAT officers on September 5th, 2015. So let me let that just stay pregnant in the air, because her angelversary, if you want to call it that, or whatever date, the death date, or the day she was stolen, let me use that, will be next Saturday. That's 5 years of persistent trauma, persistent tears, persistent uncertainty, persistent rage for me. And as the mothers know, I'm the one who lets that anger propels me. I'm the one who says, I'll never forgive, ever. So let me tell you a little bit about India, what I want each one of you all to let sit in your hearts about her. My daughter India was very soft-spoken, very quiet, very gentle. She spoke with a slow cadence, and she walked with a slow pace, very deliberate. India played 5 instruments, self-taught. She was never one to seek the center of attention, and she was beautiful in every facet of the word imaginable. Right. So on September 5th, Angela Perry came to Maryland. Excuse me, let me backtrack that. 2 days before, they chose to go back to Virginia Beach, where Angela Perry's family was going to be holding a family reunion. He was not part of India's life in the usual sense that they were in a relationship, but they had a baby together, and he wanted to meet the baby for the first time a few days before India. They drove down to Virginia Beach. Unbeknownst to him, unbeknownst to India, definitely, as they entered the city of Virginia Beach, the entire SWAT team had been assembled. Mind you all, this was Labor Day weekend, and typically for any police force, they're going to be out on the street or whatever, but they had on a Saturday, the entire SWAT team. So just let that stay for a moment because I'm going to come back to this falsity that they put up about training and things of that nature. I'm about to dismantle that shit. Okay, so excuse my Swahili, but I meant that. Okay. They watched my daughter as she got in and out of her car, India, carrying Roman's car seat. And they went from house to house, and she was introducing the baby to Angelo's family for the first time. What the police did not report is that they did also surveil India as she went to a Shell convenience store. Went in the store, there was a video that came out. India went to the left, talked to the clerk looking for something, and then went down an aisle. She was in that Shell gas station and convenience store for upwards of almost 5 minutes, which means that if the Virginia Beach police wanted to do what's called a takedown operation, they had ample time to do that. But let's backtrack and really ask the question, which, as we all know, that within the media local, they are always the megaphone for the police departments. We know that they put out destructive narratives about our loved ones. We know that they vilify our loved ones, where we have to then go back and defend and speak the truth when we are walking, and one of my phrases, and Rhonda, the sisters knows, is we're dealing with amputated hearts every day. So it's enough to try to cope with that, all right? I'm going to take a breath for a moment, because as you all know, this is just, it is beyond taxing on us psychologically, physically, spiritually, emotionally, because this is something that is irrevocable, is something inescapable. We'll never get beyond this. But what I think of is what happened to each one of our loved ones as those bullets were piercing their bodies. That every last one of our loved ones who were stolen, what were their last thoughts? Okay. Mind you, 16 officers had a chance to de-escalate. None of them chose to do that. None of them. They saw India. They knew the baby was in the car. They chose to move forward with their actions, completely ignoring her, the sanctity of her life, the sanctity of the baby's life, the sanctity, and the right to due process of law for Angelo Perry if the complaints that they were saying were true. We know they're not, always. But what they did is they waited till India got in her car from the Shell gas station. She drove to the 7-Eleven, and India was always a very timid. She didn't get her license until she was 22 anyway, so they said that she was driving defensively. How do you drive a big old Cadillac defensively? Again, they choose words intentionally to sanitize their actions and always put our loved ones in a position of doing wrong. That is their MO. It hasn't changed. And we're going to do something about that. I'm going to touch on that for a moment. It's going to change. It's going to take a different approach. They went into my baby, drove into 7-Eleven parking lot. And as India was driving to the spot, the white panel van on the right side and a blue SUV truck ran into the back of India's car with such force it lifted up the back of her car. Now, mind you, they launched the attack first. They launched the attack first. Then, while they were running into the back of India's car, they detonated flashbang grenades and threw them at India's car. So, very similar to what Sister Valerie was saying about her sister, Miriam. Every last one of those officers there knew what they were doing. These were deliberate actions. These were things that were designed to not apprehend, to not quote-unquote arrest, to certainly not preserve life, but to kill. Every last one of them had that on their mind, to kill, because they had already separated and divorced themselves from any semblance of humanity because they did not see our loved ones as human people who deserving to live. They chose not to do this. And I dare say every last one of them were Caucasian, with the exception of a few. But the majority that killed our loved ones were Caucasian. So what does that tell us? My baby, as she was in her car, driver, Angela Perry was only maybe 5'5", India was very petite, she was like 5'2", little tiny hands, being just very petite. Baby's in the back seat behind his father, okay? They threw flashbang grenades. 4 of the SWAT officers jumped out of the back of the panel van and they commenced to fire 51 rifle rounds into my daughter's car. The narrative that the police put out is 30. But no matter what, it's 50, 30, or even 1. It was excessive force and completely unnecessary. But they knew this, family. We know they knew this. Did they care? Absolutely not. They did not care. So I imagine what helps me get through is imagining the calling of this is what ancestors watching over. Can someone help me with that? Ancestors watching. All right. We as mothers are living in a position now where our descendants have now become our ancestors. That's profound. That is, yes, you said unthinkable? Yes. Unimaginable, because no doubt that as we were birthing our children, we never thought we would ever be in this position, but we are. We have to cry ourselves to sleep every day, mothers and sisters, every single day. But I put myself in my daughter's seat as she sat in that car, hearing Roman cry. I mean, they threw flashbang grenades, and if you all know what a flashbang grenade does, is it renders you can't see, you can't hear. The percussive sound of that is it renders you cannot hear, you can't see. Yet they claim Angelo Perry miraculously somehow contorted his body and shot at the police officers. Miraculously. No, we all know what the deal is. What Virginia Beach police have not reported is that Angelo Perry did spend time behind bars from the age of 21 to 34. Where they murdered India and Angelo Perry was 3 miles from the home where he was raised. They claim he was on his way to commit a crime, and that's why they did this. That they got a tip from a confidential informant, and that's why he did this. So what did they do? They positioned him front and center, and they erased India. They wrote a report, and there was one paragraph on India. One. No apology, nothing. Later on sent me a bill to get rid of the car, to dispose of the car that they murdered my baby in, the very car that her grandfather gave her. So I'm giving an abbreviated version of this because I want to say something to all the mothers, to all the family members, to all of our justice workers, everybody here. We ask for justice all the time. That's the word that they're used to. These past 5 years, I've had to define and redefine what does justice look like for me. Is that really what I want for my daughter? Justice for each one of our children, our loved ones, would have been them never being killed in the first place. I want, in the name of our ancestors, retribution. That rings different. Retribution. Can you all say that with me? Retribution. Say it one more time louder so our ancestors, our loved ones do hear that. Retribution. Because what happens is if they hear us asking for that, what does that have a connotation of? An eye for an eye. An eye for an eye. You came for mine. I want retribution because the same way that we cry every night, y'all's mothers need to feel the same pain. There is no way that they see us crying all the time. We saturate our pillows with tears. Have our tears moved them? 400 plus years, pushing 500. Babies snatched away from their mothers, our ancestors. Have our tears ever moved them? White supremacy has always been the bedrock of what we experience now. They never see us as human. And they hide behind their badges. We know how police forces were started. They were patty rollers and they were property. They were out there to defend and protect property. Just 2 days ago, 2 brothers shot. They let that little white boy walk down the street carrying, what, an AR, what was that, a 15? When they killed Tamir Rice, 12-year-old little boy, with a filet gun. Every last one of our loved ones, if they were white, I'm going to call it out, there would have been a different outcome.
Yes.
Because the world would erupt. If black police officers started killing white so-called U.S. citizens, it would be a different world as it is right now. But they get licensed through qualified immunity, through all the laws that protect them. And what do we have? Memories of our babies. Broken hearts, bleeding hearts, where we have to rely on one another for support. We say the same thing over and over again. Their MO is the same. Shoot an innocent black person. If he or she were unarmed, plant something. Say if they had some kind of weapon. Find a way to justify their murderous actions.
That's what the 10 days are for.
That's what, honey?
That's what the 10 days are for.
Exactly. Well, they never gave our loved ones a second. They never gave it a second thought before they pulled the triggers. They deliberately pointed their rifles, their guns, and killed them. Deliberately, every last one of our loved ones. It doesn't matter if you're a man. It doesn't matter in the case of Corinne Gaines, Miriam Carey, and I'm going to speak some of the women because the women are usually erased. They erased my daughter. They kept that stuff so quiet until we all know which mother said you got to make your case high profile. Pam. Okay, let me say something about that. When it comes to our children and high profile, our babies are the true luminaries. They're the lights. They're the stars. They're the center of our lives, the true luminaries. So high profile, low profile, there should be no distinction. Because each one of us birthed our babies laboring in pain, and we're still in pain, a different type. But do they hurt? They get to go home to their families. So when we start calling for retribution, that's going to make them think twice. Wait a minute. Y'all know I'm gapped up, okay? They come up and they step, they're going to get one. I have to fight every day the rage, wanting to go and seek and avenge the murder of my daughter. Because I'm not in a place where I want to forgive. I will never forgive. As a matter of fact, I curse them. I curse their bloodline. Because you all better know that they sit around the kitchen table teaching their children that we are worse than animals. Hell, they'll protect a canine dog. And you'll get more time for that before you will murder our kids. We don't usually get even, quote unquote, even a civil case, let alone criminal. 99%, they're all free. They're every last one. Archie, how many years has that been, dear mother? 27. 20 years for Marion's baby. Okay? The pain never ends. So I'm one pissed off, angry, black but proud, strong and embrace my weakness too, mother that does seek to avenge my daughter's murder. She's got sons coming up, and I'm fighting for them too. So they're not going to see me up there. They see the tears because you all know I'm very vocal on my Facebook page. All right? But I want them to know, no, until we shifted from just asking justice, they've become anesthetized to that word. It means nothing to them. But you see some brothers and sisters walking around armed and protected, saying, look, if you come, we've had enough. The world erupted when they killed George Floyd. What was different about George Floyd's murder, God rest his soul, that was different than any of our babies? I'll tell you what was. The ancestors heard, and they said, you know what, we've had enough. We've seen our mothers crying. We've had enough. And our babies, I do imagine them, and I envision our children. Each sister and mother, I want to let you all know, this is what keeps me. I imagine India with her soft-spoken self, when I'm feeling so debilitated with the grief, saying, Mama, I'm not by myself. I'm with Alonzo. I'm with Corinne. I'm with Archie. I'm with Miriam. I'm with Amir. I'm with Gary. I'm with Roscoe. I'm with, help me, I want to make sure I don't forget any of the mothers. Terrence. The Quan. I mean, the list will go on and on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten this. I just want each one of us to shift our thoughts towards retribution, okay? What does that really mean? That's what we need. Because when they see that we're not weak and docile, we're not really talking about civil rights anymore. They never gave it to us to begin with. We're still fighting. We're still fighting. And whenever I end my prayers, I always say, in the name of India Kager. I center her. I center our loved ones. I have an altar space, just so you all know, where I do call out the names of our loved ones. Because they want us to be silenced. They want us to crawl up on our beds in tears and cry. They want us to go away and give up. And unfortunately, each one of us mothers are walking around where it affects our hearts. In the Say Her Name movement, there were 3 mothers who had strokes, Rhonda being one of them. One of them passed away. All of us carry that in our bodies.
One of them said
She's had
on one day.
recently, and that's Tanisha Anderson's mother. So we carry this, we embody this, and they don't care. We have to start saying, you know what, that's it. We're tired. We're tired of being tired. You guys are never going to change. White supremacy is so embedded in this country that they really feel that they have a right to do to us what they have been doing. You know, I'm going to say this, y'all. I plan on fucking them up. Did I just say it? Yes, and I meant it. In the name of India Kager. So family, we stand. Let's say this. In the name of our ancestors. Justice and retribution for all.
Justice and retribution for all.
Thank you all. I love you. Oh, and this is my baby. I'm going to put her picture over there. India and her boys. And just so you all know, I drove with April, my sister there, sister girl, 15 plus hours from Pensacola. I literally just got here. So no sleep, but I was determined to be here with the families and stand no matter what it took. And there's one more thing I want to say. Excuse me, y'all. Let me snap our fingers on that. Every mother in here is a leader. Yes, this is all sharp and calling this together, but wait a minute. We don't need one person or two people in the front and center to be leaders. We lead for our loved ones. We have the spirit of leadership for our loved ones. We take that narrative. We reframe that narrative. We speak, and we have black joy. Where's April Roggins? I love that. What was the words of that song about heal? Say it again, sweetheart. Yeah. Healing. Healing, healing, healing. We know that we speak that. We need to make it manifest. It comes in different ways. However, I don't expect to be healed. I expect to ascend. And that's different because really healing means it has a connotation that we're over it. We're never going to be over it, but we can ascend higher every day and we can raise ourselves higher, raise the vibration, keep our loved ones front and center, and make sure that retribution is now in our lexicon because that gives us another level of power. It raises it an octave. It's a little different than just saying justice. Not saying that doesn't mean anything because it does. But they're so used to it. Retribution is going to scare their asses off. It's going to scare them. And they need to be scared. All right, family, love you. Ashayo! In the name of India. All right.
That's my vocabulary word forever. Retribution.
Retribution.
I'm just looking. It's going to be like retribution.
Retribution.
Everybody text that, tweet that, post that.
Yes.
We got to be worded.
Yes.
Hashtag it.
Yes.
We can't let them know all our secrets. I want to thank you again for sharing your